Preliminary research. Go to some news sources. So here I have Google, and let's try typing in a topic. Let's try snails. And so you look up Google. Google's a great place to start and just kind of scroll through and see if anything pops up. This one's interesting. 2018, not too old. What lonely snails can tell us about the effects on stress. Because I think it's interesting, I'm going to Control-click and open it in a new tab. I'll go back to it later. I'll look at it later. Let's try this. See at the top here of Google, there's all these different topics. You can look at images of snails. That's kind of fun. Or you can click News. Do that. If you click News, this only searches news articles. Right? So now I'm going to read news articles about snails. 4 days ago, 6 days ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And I can even get crazier. Go to Tools and go to, how recent? Within the last year. So now I can only see articles from the last year. Wow, check this out. This is about snail drama? Why the best pet of 2020 maybe. I just thought of snails randomly. What are snails attracted to? Want a new pet? Snails are worth a look. Hey, I honestly did not plan this ahead of time, but what I found already is 2 articles about snails as pets. That means I'm onto something. I'm going to go to snails and pets. News, past year. I've already seen that one, opened it in a new tab. Pandemic pet is a snail. Open in a new tab. I found 3 articles about this, which means I'm onto something. Let's look at one. Here is the so we can scroll down and we can read about this. Now what I'm doing when I'm looking through this is, yeah, I'm going to read the article, but I'm not going to necessarily read the whole thing. Instead, what I'm looking for is a quote from an expert. Hey, here we go. Oh, even better. It has got a website for that expert. So what I just did is Command T and I basically copy and pasted it and put it in a new tab. And now here we go. I'm not sure this really is the topic I want to do, but the point is I picked a topic at random and I've already found several things that are relevant right now, a conversation people are having about snails. And what's interesting to me about this is going back to some of these, it's talking about 2020, it's talking about the pandemic, it's talking about mental health. And so this topic is already interesting to me. And that is what you do. You Google something, you type in Google News, you try to find things that are relevant and recent, and that is a rule of thumb. Someone's going to email me and say, but Mr. Gunther, this is from 2 years ago. That's fine. Relevant is a relative term anyway. Now, if it's from 2 years ago and it's obviously outdated, that's one thing. But if it's about pet snails 2 years ago, probably still relevant. I can't imagine there's been that much new research about pet snails in the last 2 years, right? Okay, let's try another thing. So step 1 is just go to Google, type it in. Step 2 is go to Google News. The other thing you can do is I've listed actual news websites here. Let's try my personal favorite magazine, The Atlantic. Go to The Atlantic. Every news site will have this. New York Times, Salt Lake Tribune, Washington Post, The Economist. They'll have this little tiny thing right here that's a magnifying glass. Click it and type your topic. Snail. Here we go. And we are seeing lots of articles about snails. Now, it might not be about pet snails, but this is where it is your job to make those connections. My theory is that human beings have evolved to make connections. It's what our brains do. We like linking ideas together. We make meaning. We're like little meaning-making machines. So it's not going to just be it's probably not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Just every single site you check has something about pet snails. But if you use your brain, you can make a connection. Use your brain to make a connection. Right here, walk for your lives, deadly snails are invading Texas. Your first impulse might be to say, oh, I don't want that one because it's about how snails are bad. No, that's good. I like this one because then I'm thinking, oh, I can talk about how most people think snails are bad, but how snails can be good, and how it's actually more complicated than that. And now we're actually having a conversation about snails, where here we're talking about deadly snails, here cyborg snails, what the hell? And here we're talking about extinction, and already we're having a conversation about snails. Some people want to keep them as pets. Some people are afraid of certain snails because they're going to kill us all. Some people are making robot snails, maybe. And some people are trying to protect them from being extinct. I don't know which direction I'm going to go in, but I can tell there's already conversations happening about snails. Cool. So you can go to these specific websites and type things in. Let's look at one of these. Deadly snails are invading Texas. And what I'm going to do now is scroll down, and what I'm looking for are experts. All of these articles, all of them, are going to be quoting somebody who's an expert, because journalists aren't experts and they know this. So instead what they do is they go out there and find experts and talk to them. And we want to see the experts they're talking to. Local resident, is that an expert? No. Scroll down, scroll down. Hey, check this out. Texas Institute's study for invasive species. I'm going to open that in a new tab. And here it is, about the snail. Pretty cool, right? And that's the kind of thing that you have to do, is kind of follow these things down. And it could be the case that this Atlantic article isn't something you want to use, but it could be that there's something here on the Texas Invasive Species Institute website that is about it. And I'm just guessing now, but now I'm wondering, could it be possible that I could get a snail as a pet, but that snail, if I decide I'm sick of it and throw it away, could then become an invasive species? Right? Now we're onto something. And you have to make these connections. You can't just expect it to just appear. It is true that if you look hard enough, you can find several people talking about pet snails, but not every article on the earth is about pet snails. This brings up my next point. The difference between principal and background research. Listen, principal research is research that is directly connected to your conversation. If we're going to talk about pet snails, principal research is people talking about pet snails. However, listen, there's more research you have to do. There's more research you can do besides just people talking about pets, snails as pets. You need to learn about snails generally speaking. In order to be able to participate in this conversation well, you've got to know a little bit about snails. So you do some background research about snails. And while these background articles might not be about pets, they are about snails, which means they are essential for you to participate in the conversation, and those count as sources. Two kinds of sources. Principal sources that are directly about the conversation, background sources which give you background information that you need to better understand the topic. Next, we're going to talk about how to find academic and professional research. Academic research means it is people who are experts in their fields. They have PhDs and doctorates in the field. And you might think, oh, but I'm doing anime. That's not possible. There are people, I probably know people personally who have PhDs in anime. No matter what your topic is, listen to me, those of you who think that your topic's different. No matter what your topic is, there are experts on it. And the library databases will help you find that expert research. For now, just focus on doing news articles and websites. So your homework assignment is to find 4 articles that are either principal articles directly about a conversation or background articles. Now listen, it's entirely possible that you like your topic of snails, but you're not entirely sure what conversation you want to enter into. That's okay. Even if your proposal said you want to talk about pet snails, maybe as you're doing more research, you want to talk about them as invasive species. That's okay. That's why I keep trying to yell at you that your hypothesis is just a diving board. That's just where you start from. Where you end up, I have no idea. But as long as I can trace that thread and it makes sense how you got from pet snails to snails as invasive species, that makes sense. But if you go from pet snails to the history of monster trucks, that doesn't make sense. So as long as it's still in the same vein as your proposal topic, you're fine. So homework assignment, find 4 articles. These can be about conversations, they can be background research, anything